So yeah, let's talk about transformational experiences. What do you think is the most transformational experience in humans' life in general and in your own experience? Question for everybody.
Most transformational, I would say, is becoming alive and then dying. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of
Mm-hmm.
special things in between.
Like what?
Mm, I suppose when you first decide that you kind of know who you are, and then all the sequential times where you realize, oh, actually, you know what? There's more than that. Or when you find out that you start to have roles for other people, you kind of become aware of yourself and the space, I suppose, and the relation between that. Yeah.
How do you find that out? Have you had an experience
Mm.
when you had that step in your life? Because many people have difficulties with that. Well, with identifying themselves.
I suppose it's a continuous progress and process, but I think at a certain point when you realize, like, when they are realized, oh, I'm actually going to school to be a software engineer right now. I guess that's really what I'm doing. Um, Whereas sometimes you're kind of in between and you're in transitionary periods and you're not sure what everything means. Then sometimes there's just so many things that click together that kind of form harmony that you realize, oh, this fits together, and that's for a reason. I'm doing all these things. I have all these friends that are kind of in the same space or in the same direction. And in that moment, you can reflect. And sometimes you kind of go into somewhere else, and then it
Hmm.
changes slowly. But yeah, just kind of look and see what things harmonize together, and then I figure out, ah, that's where I am right now.
Nice, interesting. Thanks for your answer, Mendes,
Yeah, I think that
Mylon.
that constantly reevaluation of yourself over time is what leads to transformational experiences.
Mm,
Something else, trauma itself is a could be like a transformational experience. Going through
yeah,
a loss of something, or grieving something could trigger that for some people. So it could be
Yeah,
a mixture of a negative thing or a positive thing. Um, your thoughts, Ozzy?
yeah, I can totally relate to that. I think one of the most because the transformation could be different. It could be shock therapy, or it could be like a gradual change that you don't even notice. It's like a pre-planned trajectory in your life where you follow one step after another. Sometimes transformation happens in a very rapid way. So this is an example. I think those negative reinforced development periods are mostly stressful, and they're fast. I think they're much faster than the positive changes, because that's the price you pay. It's like for the time. Time is really important, and you can do something like slowly but surely, but it's going to take like 5 years. Whereas if you're motivated in a negative way, sometimes you can do some crazy things in 6 months, like the same
yeah,
stuff, because you're. Unfortunately, I think that's the way we've been raised, and probably even evolutionary we're like that, because we react to negativity like 5 times better, like in terms of the level of our reaction. When somebody tells you something negative, most people would react to that and barely react to some positive call to action. Hey, make your life better, blah blah blah. That's not gonna sell anything. In order to sell stuff, you need to poke into pain points, and like find that topic that actually bugs this person, and that's going to attract their attention, and that's where a lot of energy is. What do you think? Well, in my experience, I think the biggest influence that I've had in my life was in the periods when somebody else died, and people are. I can't say that I had a very hard problem, like hard time with grieving. I think everybody does, but still, like I would say that relatively I was good. I could support other people. I transformed in a better way, but I think it was a very difficult and shocking transition when you have this trauma from other people's dying when you don't expect that, and all of a sudden the system changes so dramatically. It's like a black swan, and now you have to adapt, and that's stressful. And I think similar situation with the political situation today. In many countries, everything has changed so dramatically, and you have to adapt and somehow live your life.
Yeah, I agree.
just going
I think
through
a lot of the
simple-
times. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. You're saying something. Go
Um,
ahead, Lindsay.
Thanks. No, I agree. I feel like it taps into your survival mechanisms. I find that if I'm really changing fast, like you say, because there's no other way, there's no other option, and then you're faced with a situation where you either suffer or perish, literally, or you have to change. So every movement is like the most efficient step into the right direction. But if you're just making something that was already good better, there's not really, I mean, you're not suffering, right? So there's not a rush.
Yeah, improvement and
I
development.
appreciate negativity for that reason.
Yeah, there's a lot of energy there. I think the basic feelings like fear, disgust, and what's the four things? Sadness, anger, disgust, and I don't remember what exactly. We have, like, if you take the modern psychology, even if you remember the cartoon by Pixar, remember Upside Down or something like that, Inside Out, something like that, where
yeah.
a girl had like
Love that
5
one.
basic emotions controlling what she did. I'm like, why is it so bad that we have only one positive feeling, joy, and the rest, like 4 of the 80% of our feelings are negative? How terrible is that? But then I realized that fear is seen as negative, and people avoid fear because it's suffering mostly, right? But at the same time, because fear is so innate, it's so close to our centers of limbic system and our body response, it's like so quick. Adrenaline gets you going in like milliseconds. You're ready to fight or run in like a very short time. And I think that that's where people see it as negative, but if you think about it, that this negative thing is actually the one that has a huge energetic potential. Our body is built to use fear as a mechanism that starts our systems that start very rapidly and very effectively. I wonder if we can adapt that to our needs, like harness this power somehow. I think we can.
I think that's the hardest question. How to adapt it, how to use that energy instead of being disabled by it, right?
What do you think?
I'm kind of curious.
I think just having the awareness of going through those types of things to lead to people being able to make that assertion between what they're experiencing and possibly taking command of it, not just living through the transformation or the experience, but actually taking control of it and utilizing it for their needs. That could be awesome.
Yeah, as I say, we are all drivers of our lives. Even though some people take positions of passengers and pretend that they're not driving, but we all are driving. Even though but it's not being passenger, it's like wearing a blindfold while you're driving. So I would prepare to the future better if I didn't have my blindfold on. So I think it's important to understand that you're driving anyway, and there's no other choice, because it's like seeing no choice and thinking that you like not dealing with your problems, not taking responsibility for your life, is still making choices. No choice is a choice as well. And I think that it's important to understand first and to know that you're afraid of something and not to ignore that. Like, some people do not understand where their real personality is because they don't understand what's their biggest fear. Because normally people don't talk about stuff, like, just for the sake of talking about it. For example, in my classes, I teach English in Russian to Russian speakers because I live in Russia. Yeah, many questions we could discuss about that, right? But it's just interesting how I saw the reaction of my adult students when I would ask them some questions in terms of English. I would say, what's the most terrible death in your opinion? That's one of the questions that I ask. Like, or maybe today we discussed what's your big dream, and how has it changed in your lifetime? Where did you go? I went from, like, I want to fly, my dream is to fly, to being a cosmonaut, and then to being just a regular person or something like that. So the plank went down.
A normal person, yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
At a certain point.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you think.
Hi, Bernie.
That's
Join the
the
conversation.
best to aim for. Just a normal person.
Of course, I'm exaggerating, but what I'm saying is, like, we're trying to understand where's the common ground between our wishes and our true inspiration and aspirations, and between the reality and what life gives you. Because not everybody's lucky enough, right? Because the Western culture likes to believe that everything depends on us, but in many countries of the world, not many things depend on you. If you live in a society where there's like something going on, some big things going on, and you don't have control over that, even if you disagree with stuff, it's going to happen anyway, and you have to live with that. And that kind of breaks this period of education of children, because life changes so quickly that how can you teach a child to trust the world and to be, the driver of their world if they have no control whatsoever? You don't have control. How can you teach other people to have control? So, yeah, I think this is important, and I believe that here in these rooms we have people who are a little bit above the average in terms of, like, the communication with self and others. I think that we have an amazing communication here where we can talk about very different things, like Bernie, for example. I wouldn't say that I'm a believer, but I'm not a religious person, because that's my background. I come from an area that was like just yesterday we were pagans, and we would say, oh, now let the big God, for example, agree with you for all your toasts, for example. Then we had a period of Christianity in 17th century, a very short period of time, and then we had Muslim people, come in and spreading their beliefs. So it's been in a very short period of time. So I don't feel like I'm part of the Muslim culture. I'm not part of the Christian culture. I'm a part of my old age. I think that if you have so many choices, let's go back to the earliest one. So I go to the but some people are believers, and I love how we can talk about our ideas, our thoughts, about our beliefs, without blaming each other, or maybe disrupting communication, or trying to shut up the other person, or maybe like talking over somebody else. I think that respect and the ability to share our thoughts and have a clear communication is the first step in the development of humankind. Because as I see in the everyday world, it's not there. We have a long way to go from what we have today. I think that's why we have wars and problems.
I don't think we come from a society of open communication.
Not at all.
Now, technology and the age of the internet, we're able to communicate openly across the world and actually share and partake in potentially transformational experiences. That's the beauties of modern technology now today.
Yeah, many questions for technologies too, but I think we that's the mindset that is the fundamental mindset. I think when you believe that you deserve to live and you deserve to do your best, and no matter what happens around you, you will be able to protect yourself, your loved ones, and to find the way out of the situation without being depressed or being, giving up. I think that's the first level, and then whoever and whatever belief a person chooses after that, it's their choice. What really matters to me is their behavior and their openness and their their docile approach to things, where they don't want to attack somebody for some kind of words. These are just words. If somebody attacks you with words, respond to that. I don't know, maybe I'm too toxic. Came from a toxic background, so sorry. Hold on, let me give you a microphone.
Somebody the other, I was just relating to something the other day, how in this area I said I spoke to a woman who's from Russia, which is you, and how I communicated just with a guy last night, he's from Germany. I find it so interesting, come together and just speak to people from different countries, and we find that we're not as different as we may times, but we share the same hopes and aspirations, and could I say it? We share a lot of the same sort of dreams. We're all reaching. As you can see in this room here, we're all reaching for that something that it can fill us. Some people are still searching. Some people feel that they found it. The fact is that we're all reaching and searching, for the key thing. But I do enjoy speaking to people from different countries. I find it I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's also a root ability of a person to accept the other person. I think that there's a very slippery road and edge between some two ideas that I hear a lot. Some people might say that, oh, I'm proud of my nation, for example. You can, replace nation with anything else. Have a big attachment, something like belonging. My country, my culture, my blah, 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 whatever you want to use there. But there's a very different formulation of the same feeling when you say, my nation is the best. These are similar ideas, but very different approaches. The first one gives you more responsibility, where if you're proud of something, you have to, continue to carry the same banner, right? You have to comply with this, if you have great ancestors, great country, great whatever, you have to be a good representative of that culture, representative of that country or whatever in a community around the world. And the second belief is that my nation or my country, my whatever is the best. I think that puts you in more of an arrogant position where it's more destructive than constructive. I think it's so easy to just divide things in two things. What's destructive and what's constructive? That's it. Just use the constructive instead of destructive, right? And I think
fear is what's underneath that. Like you say, there's two different ways to kind of profess your love for something, and I think if you are insecure if what you love is good or not, I think it's going to cause someone to kind of project a confidence that's not there. So oh, my thing is the best thing, because if it's not,
exactly,
it would mean that maybe a person is supporting something that is not worthy of support. And I think earlier you said how important it is to learn from these negative feelings and these negative energies. And I think boasting or arrogance is kind of like taking that negative energy and then doing the opposite of learning from it, right?
I would say that it's a very natural reaction, because fear naturally gives you negative start. Aggression, I would say it's good. It's good for different situations. I always remember about the selection of dogs. If you think about it, well, you can talk about evolution, whether you believe it or not, but it's a very simple fact that we need to adapt to our environment, right? And there are certain requirements of every certain environment. In some countries, you have to be successful and you have to have more money. In some other countries, that's not enough. You have to have that and your intelligence, your background, your something like likability, or maybe how pleasant you are. In some other countries, you need to have money and aggression, because those are unsafe areas. And for example, if we take some countries that have a high level of conflict, like I believe that some African countries have a lot of problems with that, and many countries around the world, including Russia. Russia is pretty much there. You need, because you feel so deeply insecure about the world, that you have to create, your mind kind of creates automatically, naturally, based on your fear. If you can't control it, it's going to control you. And that's why people start acting so strange, like they buy some, golden toilets and like steal shitload of money that is not gonna, it's just impossible to spend that money, that amount of money in your entire life if you just a regular person. You don't know what to buy for that. I'm gonna just give it to the charity, because you don't know what to buy. There's nothing you want to buy that's valuable. Only maybe traveling, but that's not gonna require that amount of money. And these people buy some crazy things, and you think, wow, this is crazy. Like, what kind of thinking you should have to do this with this amount of money? So I think every environment has a certain set of criteria that we are selected for. Everything is selected for, right? And a selection of dogs showed that. Sometimes when I see, like, when you go to YouTube or Instagram and find like bunch of funny videos or memes or something, you see those like crippled dogs and cats that look so crazy. You think, wow, how does this creature is still alive? It's because humans decided that they're cute, just because they're, crippled or something. And that's a whole different area of selection. Isn't that ridiculous? That a whole species of dogs that were crippled and that were supposed to die are being selected for, and that's why they nurture this cripple or disability in creatures, because it's fun, or maybe they find it cute or something. Isn't that crazy? And I think that's
our environment.
What about compassion? Yeah. What about compassion? I mean,
it's not always affordable.
When I see these dogs and cats are crippled, I feel so sorry. And what amazes me is that I'm so glad that there are people, because some people will just keep driving by or walking by. But I'm glad that how can I say it? I'm glad that everybody has their own gift or talent, whatever. Some people are drawn. I know people who go to school for marine biology. They want to save the whales and do all sorts of things. So, then I see some people who just want to adopt children, as many as they can. And some kids are cute, and some people may be not so cute, or some have disabilities, whatever. And there are certain people for every type of thing who will adopt children with disabilities. That's what they have on their heart. So I'm glad that those people, I guess I have my thing too. We all have our thing that we do, and I'm glad that we all have these different things that we're drawn to that we can do. Because what if everyone was drawn to the same thing? What would happen to the rest of the world? What would happen? What would happen? I'm glad people want to go to school for medicine, go for astrology or astronomy, cure cancer, or different things. Fixing the railroad tracks, whatever the case may be. So
sure.
It takes a village. It takes a village, as we say. And in terms of people speaking of their countries being better, if you look at Black people in America, the opposite is true. A lot of the Black people I meet, the general consensus is that America hasn't been too good to us. And so we resent, I feel fine, but, the majority of people I speak to, they resent, they still hold to how they came over here. I was just writing about that.
The slavery?
Slavery. And so, and not only that slavery, but what they go through even today, prejudice, and being victimized because of the color of their skin. Mm-hmm. So I think in every country, you're going to find a little bit of that, even perhaps in your country. I'm sure you know about things that people.
Well, I am one of those people.
We're always going to find something Excuse me?
I would say that I am one of those people. I can totally understand what you're talking about because we had a history of a collective trauma where the Soviet, not the Soviet, it was like a long time ago, like 2.5 centuries ago, and it was like 1965. It was the end of the 100 years of war, and between the Russian Empire and the Caucasian, like, you know, societies. Like at that time, there was no country whatsoever. There were just like tribes and riding horses and going crazy. Yeah, and at the end of that war, a long and difficult time where it was like devastating to the population, the culture, all of that. There's no safety basically. There's no opportunity to have any formal educative system or maybe any kind of sustainable development. And at the end of that war, eventually Russia took over the whole territory between two seas in the Caucasus. And 95% of people who lived by the Black Sea were either killed or exiled to Turkey. So if you heard of the Turkish earthquakes that happened recently between Turkey and Syria, that's the area they were actually relocated, and that's why it's so it's just so strange to see people who were born in another country. They have, you know, Turkish mentality, but you hear them speak your native language, which is a very rare language. Like I would say that in Africa they have like so many local languages and groups, and like it's like a linguistic heaven there, right? I'm a linguist, so I would enjoy learning some of the languages. And
there are a lot of Muslims, right? Mostly Muslims.
I think that's a totally separate concept. I think that nationalities and religions, their combination is sheerly the example. I think that the result of their coincidence.
That's what I heard, that they were mostly Muslim.
They are, and they're getting more and more Muslim because I believe that Arabic countries have more money to influence their ideology and like to spread their ideas and beliefs through, you know, everyday connections with real people, and Russia does not have these resources for obvious reasons. And every culture and every belief, every system, like large system, tries to, you know, spread the information and ideology. And yeah, I think that's why the world changes from age to age. But I think that now is an unprecedented era of time, because we have so many new factors that unite not countries, not regions, not nationalities, but the whole Earth. And that's why I love having this little globe in our space all the time, because we can see the map, the globe, the world as it is, without boundaries, without countries, without like differences. It makes us understand that we are all together in this, and we have to protect the biological life as it is, sentient, life forms. And I think this is an emergence of sentient, collective. I think that now we are undergoing the transformational process as a planet as well. Oh, hi there! You have some reactions, Cece. Would you like to join the conversation? We have like a smaller circle of people today. Karthik also.
I'm just gonna plug in my headset. It's low.
Okay.
So just gonna look a little weird.
Thanks. That's very polite to say that. Cece, would you like to join the conversation? I remember you. No. Okay. just reacting, right? That's sweet.
I wanted to talk about. I wanted to go back on. Ernie brought up having compassion, and
that was a nice point. Mm-hmm.
It really was, because that can lead to transformational experiences. Because it like fosters like connection and understanding between people,
and helping others.
Mm-hmm. Right, just having that as a lens to see the world through, and being able to understand other experiences and perspectives, oftentimes will help us grow in our own understandings and lead to that necessary transformation.
Yes, that's definitely what I want to see in the future. I'm just a little bit worried because I see the human nature, and I have my own opinion about it, and I think it's not very positive. I assume that like by default people, again due to evolutionary selection process, where we react to negative stuff much more than to positive stuff. I take that as a default setting and then try to build from that and make it better somehow. So I think that compassion is great, everything is great, and that's the indicator of a truly humane person. When you want to help, that's your natural intention, to help other people, to make the world around you better. Again, I think we come back to this simple, toggle, whether it's creative or destructive. So I love everything that is just creative, whatever, however different it is. But unfortunately, I think there's a tendency in the world where something different is considered something bad, and that's why people don't want to accept anything that is different. Hi Karthik, I think you've been here from previous events. You are from India as far as I can see. If you want to join the conversation, we'd be happy to hear. You can practice your English if you want, but get a little bit closer to the microphone so that way we can hear you well. Hey Omni.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, that's much better. Do you want to say something about the transformational experiences? What's the most transformational experience for people in general, and for you? What do you think? Karthik, it was a question for you. Do you want to speak and share your experience? Here's the megaphone to you in case if you want to share your opinion. It looks a little bit puzzled. Karthik, do you understand what I'm saying? Flabbergasted. That's a funny word. Omni, how about you? Would you like to share before we get back to Karthik? Yeah, okay, so we spoke. Yeah. Oh, yes, finally.
Go ahead, Violet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
awkward silence, yeah. Can you give a megaphone?
No, I won't. I would like to share my transformational experience. Before, in my childhood, I spent most of my time believing that I'm gonna be a soccer player in future, and all the time was passionate about football, and just thought about being a players like Messi or Ronaldo, and I spent 5 years, dedicated whole 5 years onto this, but still could not just enter the top national players that can actually just lead into a country's league as well as any European teams. So, but in the meantime, this kind of stuff, as I just age, I noticed that, oh, I'm not gonna make it, and this is gonna be a huge trouble if I don't find my skills in my life. So then steadily I just cut all my dreams and start to just spend my time for education and things I was passionate about in science as well. But in the meantime, this kind of failure in football that I had just urged me to just, okay, it's time to be best right now in the science rather than in football, and at least be in a group. So as I feel that I'm better in my group, I felt like, oh, I'm gonna be a best in my country or in the league or in the world. So this kind of old drama could just lead me to just be harder in my other passions, and it at least just it drives me to be a lot more better. So at least it's a good idea, I believe, to have such transformational drama and then drive and boost the other performance. yeah, that was my experience.
Thank you for sharing. That's pretty cool. I think that being the best at and understanding like what your opportunities are and your possibilities like in abilities are is the probably is the hardest part, that where you have to understand and face the reality sometimes that your dreams are not something that you will be able to achieve. That's sad, but I think that when you understand that earlier, that might help to focus on something that is different, but you could be better at that. So yeah, that's a very interesting transformational experience. I feel like there are two different approaches to things. Like the first one is to change the reality to your desired state, or to change yourself to the reality's state. What do you think is the like? When do people choose one way or another? Omni, you finally here to had some entrance problems. Yeah, who wants to talk? Would you like to share anything? Or maybe just like segue back to the topic of transformation. What's the biggest transformation? Let me give you a megaphone. Yeah, there you go. I know. I knew that Mendes would be even faster than me. Okay, yeah, we can hear you.
All right, perfect. So, what I'm going through and what I realized, a lot of people don't realize this, and that is, we get many different things to do in life. We have many different desires that come to us, but a lot of us don't realize that they really don't tell us in school this, but we have a certain time to get those certain desires. Because we're constantly growing, because we're growing. It doesn't always have to be physically, but it's also mentally and to a degree spiritually, depending on the person. And we have a bunch of different desires. But when we have a certain amount of time to get that desire, but once that time goes up, there's something else that pops up that for us to gain or do. And what Mylan or Sheath was saying is kind of like something that happens a lot when we're younger. So we kind of aim for these like big, like really physical, or either just are physical, or either just very entertainment orientated, like type of goals a lot of times. And we try real hard for those, but you have a certain amount of time to do that, because just in like a lot of those like in football or something like that, you have a certain amount of time where you could be a player, and then after that they'd find you a little too old, so constantly shifting. And the big problem that goes on is that since we don't really learn this too much, is that you have a bunch of people that's still going on, still trying to attach to old dreams that they had, or old goals that they had. So they're probably doing something that they don't want to do in life or whatever, but they're trying to still attach themselves to that dream. And that's exactly what's going on with a friend of mine. After COVID started, he lost his job. So he's trying to get back into work now, but the job what he was doing wasn't really his dream, but he still dreamed as being a comedian slash actor. And now he's trying to get back into work, and he's realizing that it's just like, well, one thing throughout COVID, I realized, because before he was real good at writing jokes for in terms of as being a comedian, and he spent most of the time forcing himself to write jokes. They didn't come out naturally, and when I'd have him read them to me, they were like some of the worst jokes I've ever heard. It was almost like he forgot where the punchline was. So I had to literally I had to talk to him recently, just a few weeks ago, and tell him, I'm like, man, what else do you want? And recently he got he wrote a book, and he some company signed him to publish a book. So he's very happy now writing books. And I told him, I was like saying, okay, well, what's your goal? Still the same old things. And then I'm like, well, what about writing a book? And he's like, well, actually, I'm really, really liking this. And I'm like, okay. Then I asked him, like, when was the last time you shift your goals or anything? And he's like, I haven't. So I had to explain this to him, and now he's starting to feel like a new person.
Do you
Now
think
he's
that?
writing more?
Sorry, go ahead. Do you think that perhaps he's been, I don't mean to take from you, do you think that,
Hmm.
um, I know people like that too, but do you think that he could be that you're, I hate to say it, but enable him? Because unless secured a job where he can financially support himself, things of that nature. I know a lot of people take jobs like that, acting, whatever, they do it on the side, or but they don't really depend on it 100% until they could break into the field. So
Yeah.
are you supporting his endeavor to, because sometimes if we have kids, as long as we continue to support them, like financially, then they would never, go off, and we pray that they will. But I was just wondering, could that be it? Because sometimes we need, people need a boost to get out there and find out what else they can do. We don't have to just ourselves to, you know,
That
could that
that
be
is
it?
part of it, definitely. I don't support him, definitely not. I am fighting on trying to get him to get back and get like, just a job so he could do this stuff, if he wants to really get into it so he could do it like try to do it full time. But obviously you gotta work a job at the same time too. And he still doesn't have a job. He had one, and like now he's starting to learn back because he hasn't done this in the longest time. He's working with this for so long. He didn't realize how technology has changed in terms of looking for work and everything. I help him with that. I do feel that is part of it too. But just in case though too with the comedy was saying like that is over. And I had to go through it too. I'm actually I had some like other
Right.
goals I wanted and everything, and especially when this year started, I realized a lot of them I just don't care for anymore. So I had to change a lot of that stuff. Every year I change up I look at what I want to do, and I make a new goals list or whatever, and what I want to manifest, and from this year started, I realized so much things that I wanted. I was like, man, I don't care for this stuff anymore. So it all,
Mm.
I realized there's much other things that I'm actually more into. So I just feel that's it. Like that's part of transformation. I feel that's true transformation. As you grow, you start seeing the world in different ways, and
Mm.
you start to realize there's certain things that you just don't need anymore. 'Cause you just well, you and that's good enough.
Very interesting question. I think this is an interesting topic because I certainly see that pattern in Western culture where yes, you can. You gotta chase your dreams and like be yourself and find your whatever. And people, I think there's a harsh truth that not everybody's gonna be destined to succeed at those things. Some things that you love, you're not always be able to be really good at that because if you started later, for example, playing the violin, it's going to be super difficult to become somebody like outstanding. So that's the dilemma that we have to also like make decisions whether you want to be successful and provide your self and your family for your family, or whether you want to be allegedly happy because like when you do something that you love, even if it doesn't bring you too much money, it's great to be if it makes you happy, right? But I think it's so difficult to find that balance because at the beginning some other people would say that whatever you're investing your time into, it just doesn't work, and it's hard to understand how much time it's going to take for you to acquire the level of expertise or how do I say it, like a skill that is going to be assessed, and then you can say, okay, this is going well and you should continue that because in the future like the trajectory is going to bring you to the level where you become a good specialist, a good skillful person, and that way you can switch to this stuff. Or it's going to be something that is just a futile effort, it's just a hobby, and it's never going to become like something that can be monetized or something that could bring you benefits, not only pleasure. Both is great, but
I think what
go ahead.
I think what happens sometimes is that people have invested so much time and energy into something, and years and years, and they can't imagine. They feel like if they give up whatever that dream is, they are throwing away all that time that they devoted to something. I mean, all the time and energy that they devoted have become an image of themselves. That's themselves, and to say that they have to give it up, it's like to say you have to give up self to them. And so this is why some people, I know some things are futile, but and not only that, but we who are staying on the outside, we don't want to crush anybody's dreams either. No matter how people it may look to us, we don't want to be the one who says, because of you, I could have done this and you told me I couldn't do it. We don't want to crush their dreams either. So it boils down to it has to be that person themselves has to either keep pursuing whatever, if that's what drives you, or to come to a decision, perhaps I could try something else or do this on the side, or or whatever the case may be. But I know I wouldn't want to crush somebody's dreams, but
That's the
but
problem.
that
But
Yeah.
yeah,
sorry.
I had a feeling that was the problem. You don't want to.
Yeah, but that's the problem. Like, you can
Yeah.
crush someone's well, it doesn't even have to be crushing. There is something called, like, constructive feedback or constructive criticism. Like with what I did with my friend, I had to sit there and tell him, I'm like, man, I'm like, okay, I see you do all these things, you're right in all this stuff and everything, but are you really still having fun doing it? And he's like, not really. And I'm like, does it feel like a chore? And he's like, yeah, it does. And then I'm like, okay, but how come, there's certain other things he needs to do, to get out, get himself popular and everything. He hasn't done this stuff in the longest time. So I was like saying, okay, have you done all these certain things? And he's like, no, not really. I'm like, when are you gonna do it? And he's like, I don't really know. I'm like, I told him, I said, man, maybe do you think that you might be moving into another direction, or there's something else now out there? And he was just paused, and he was just like, you might be making a choice. I'm like, what else do you like? And then that's when he started telling me, he said, you know what, I'm really starting to like writing books, and everything. And then I'm like going, okay, then maybe that's your new thing. And that's when I told him, I said, you're given a bunch of different things, like as you grow up, and as time goes, one will disappear, and then after you go for something else, like something else comes. And then that's when he was like, wow, that makes sense. And like where I learned this was from like when I was younger. I mean, I was going through the same thing, there was like a bunch of other things that I wanted to do, and I was having some issues. And there's a good motivation speaker. He was popular back then. He's not so popular now, but his name was Les Brown. You can still see some of his videos on YouTube. And he was the
Yeah,
one that brought that
heard
up
that.
on one time when I was looking at one of his things, and he said, you only have a certain amount of time to do, something you really want. After that, something else is gonna come off. He said, you gotta be realistic with yourself, and you also gotta like know when to stop a certain thing and realize this isn't for you anymore, and move on to the other thing.
Yeah, but
The sunken cost fallacy, where we believe that when we invest so much time in something, that the risk of losing it all is there. That's such a fallacy, because we're never started from scratch. Once you have
Yeah.
all your experiences and your knowledge, you're starting from somewhere that is informed, that does have wisdom, that does have knowledge.
The thing is what I'm saying is that if you have all this knowledge of something and you're scared of or you're if you're in that situation, I think a lot of times this is what happens a lot in the music industry. You might have like a lot of people that tried being an artist that didn't work out. Sometimes your next path may not mean that like you're gonna go change and become a truck driver. Sometimes your path may still be somewhere in the music industry, but you're not just going to be an artist anymore. Like a lot of people now, like a lot of these rappers now these days, or even like song artists these days, they have like people write for them. And there's a lot of people
Mm.
now that that were once like want to be the artists that they become, but they gave up because it didn't work. But now those people instead are just letting their talents like write for
Hmm.
other artists, you know. So like a
Yeah.
lot of times, like when you change, it doesn't necessarily mean like you're leaving a whole industry. Sometimes it
Right.
might mean
Right.
that you're
Yeah.
moving this, you're staying in the same industry, you're just doing something else. And in a lot of ways, those people are actually sometimes those people get paid more than these same artists. So it's actually a
Hmm.
better for a lot of these people to go on that path. So
Right, and
yeah.
there's many ways. There's also many ways to reinvent yourself. And that's what a lot of people
Yeah.
do. They reinvent
Yeah.
themselves. You don't have to
Hmm.
be the top at your game, but you can lend your services. You can do that here. You could do, what do they
Yeah.
call those? You could do little gigs here and there. You could
Hmm.
do. You could always. You could still stay there, because for one thing, that's not going to change. If you take a person's dream of being creative, you could kill that person, okay? So that person still has that drive, and they'll end up taking that drive to the grave. They will still have that drive. It's just, how can you manifest that drive in other ways? Because they have a creative flair, and that's who they are. So it's just a matter of, how can you reinvent yourself, or how can you apply it in different ways. Perhaps you can work with kids. Like, some people want to be a famous basketball coach, player, now they're a coach. Some people want to
Hmm.
be the famous Mozart or whatever, and now they're a music teacher. Some people
Hmm.
want to be the best drummer, now they play in nightclubs, so have you. Or some people just sell their art. Like they say, starving artists. you know and so there's been, or you could just sing for your church choir, sing for your family. I don't know, do something, hire yourself out. Or you could just set up your own little shop. Want to make, if you're like cooking, you could open your little shop up selling cupcakes. Make go good and may flop. At least you gave it your
Hmm.
best, or sell it to the neighborhood. So there's many ways you can do it, but one thing you can't do, you can't take away that person's creativity, no matter what. But you
Yeah.
still gotta bring in the finances.
Yeah, yeah, that
You
the balance that we
you made a
talk
good
about all the
point,
time.
Bernie.
Mhm.
Made a good point, Bernie, because if you look at a lot of chefs these days, you'll see a lot of the chefs these days are these like younger people, and you'll see that they're like tattooed up and all types of things. And it's not like it's a bad thing or anything. When you really talk to a lot of these chefs, you'll see that a lot of them are maybe started out as some type of artist of something, and it's become
Mhm.
like the common job now for a lot of chefs. So like, like that were once into music to leave music and become a chef, and they're so good at it already because as an artist they understood how to like take different genres or take different things and put
Hmm.
it together, and now they have those skills, just put it to food. So
Music
it's like
taste, yeah, yeah.
there's always something.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think you
Yeah.
mentioned this
Right.
transformation as well. Sometimes when people get
Hmm.
transformed in one area, they actually get a boost in another area. I think you shared for one of the early events that you had, like at least some like five to
Yeah.
seven different talents that you boosted through like a totally different
Mhm.
area of development. And yeah, that's so cool that we stepped into the era where we could afford. I think, well, I'll be skeptical about things, and I would say that we, as a society, have to have a certain level of basic needs covered to have this choice and to have this luxury of looking for yourself, right? Because there's always a question, like when some people say, "Yeah, I'm traveling around the world, looking for myself." I'm like, "Yeah, I have only one question: where do you get money?" Like, if I had money, of course I would love to look for myself. Amazing. Sounds like a dream, but how do you do that? You need actual money for doing that. So yeah, I think this is
Yeah.
it's a luxury, and I think that the majority of developed countries can afford that, and developing countries also can allow that to happen. And I believe that I'm very optimistic. I think that the world is as wealthy and as developed today to start this like big process of transformation where some countries could be headliners and some countries could shift on that spectrum to a better future by developing these different skills, looking for yourself, choosing what you love, like finding your passion, finding something that you're best at. And if the situation allows for that thing to become something that you could really monetize, that's just perfect. And I believe that we're stepping into this reality where people nowadays buy emotions. that's so crazy if you think about it, but it works. Like, many people buy emotions. They choose a person who's going to share with them not only their expertise, like, for example, if I teach English, there are many people who can teach English, but some people, like, they're ready to pay 2 times more, just because I have something else that I can provide, like something like emotions or personality or connections or something like that. And I think that it's a luxury to afford that, because in the past, in industrial and pre-industrial era, I think it was much more difficult to survive, and you had to make choices. Now you can find balance, and it's easier because the losses are not so huge. You can have some money to travel around the world in some countries that are, poorer than your country at least. But what if the whole world develops to the level where all countries are going to be developed? I am wondering, is that possible to create? Well, I think we could use robots as slaves, not other countries. So yeah, I'm optimistic about the future. I'm sure that we are lucky to see this rise of sustainable lifestyle, where we don't have to dominate somebody else to be good.
Sorry.
No need to sorry.
Specific.
Hold on, let me give you a microphone.
We gotta get a little specific about like what we mean by developed countries and what type of wealth that we're looking at and financing. Because there is like the cash money that we're referring to, that you do have to make a living with finances, but there's also like the wealth in spirit, wealth in knowledge, other areas of the world that are affluent in like spirituality, affluent in being able to access their emotions, but we're not always crediting that as them being developed. Whereas in other countries, first world countries are industrialized, we are developed for technology, the physical technology, we're talking about like microchips and etc. But that doesn't mean we're also as developed as like a community, as a collective community. Which goes kind of like to that tandem between Western ideologies and non-Western ideologies. Even me saying Western and non-Western is prioritizing the Western ideology still. So this thing about like what we're prioritizing as meaning developed and where our future is actually leading.
Yes, such a great comment. So when I use that terminology is actually what I take from my school, because this is what we were taught when we were in geography classes, right? Some countries are developed and they have like a certain level of development. It's certainly European countries, United States of America, Canada, what else, like China was not there, Singapore, like some countries like that, like South Africa and stuff like that. They're developing countries like Argentina, Brazil, Russia, like Ukraine, I don't know, Kazakhstan, and like there's some poorer countries, like for example like Nigeria, I think is one of the countries with the highest level of problems in different spheres. And yeah, there's a certain economic terminology that was used at least like 50 years ago, and for I think still continues in some of formal educational institutions. So I think this is another big good sign that we started talking about spirituality more, and we started paying attention to being happy in our mental health as the priority, not expansion and like rich and success and having more money and more cars. If you cry in your car and you are super unhappy, why would you have that car? If you could achieve your happiness through simpler things and by working on your inner world rather than outer world, right? Thoughts, comments, anybody?
I think sometimes you speak of having that car or having this, sometimes depending on how you came up, if you came up just having barely nothing at all, I think you have a greater appreciation for that car, even for that piece of car.
Of course, if you have the comparison.
Right, because you learn to appreciate things, in life. I mean, or even if you even that job where others may say, oh, they could take this job and shove it, I hear a lot of teachers talk that way. But if a person always, struggled to even get into the teaching field and finally gotten there, they're just so happy to, even though there's a lot of stuff that comes along with it. So, in this life, I think the greater thing is knowing who we are and learning to appreciate what we have. We may not have the best. One thing I taught my daughter, I don't care about designer shoes. I taught her that from since she was young, and so she has maintained that. She's 23 years old, and I think she bought some Crocs once. Well, okay, I'll let that slide. But she was never into buying expensive shoes or things. I said, if you're gonna have your name put on something, put your own name on it. It's just paying for somebody else's name.
Mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm.
and I told her, just to not we have to learn to appreciate who we are first before we can appreciate anything else in the world. Because if we're not happy with ourselves, it doesn't matter. We have the most beautiful home, we have money piled up in the bank, whatever. In fact, we could even have good friends. If we're not happy with ourselves, that's going to seem like put a damper on everything else around us. So we have to find out. I think I got off topic, huh?
There's no such thing as off topic. We easily segue from one.
You're
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, from one topic to another. You can allow yourself to do whatever you want to do. You're right.
Dr. Garbage had a question. Go ahead.
Hey.
Yes, I
Dr.
have a question
Garbage.
on exactly that topic that I love about. We always hear that you got to be happy with yourself. The question is, how can you be happy with yourself?
Yeah, and what's
Oh,
the
oh,
most
I
valuable?
can answer.
Oh, that,
Well,
yeah,
You said,
I-
how can you be happy with yourself?
yeah.
Great question. Let's talk
Being
about
happy
it.
with yourself is it's a learned thing, accepting thing. There's going to be times where you're going to be so upset with yourself. But you know that comes with the territory. But overall, you can't be happy with yourself when you realize that you still have failures in your life, mistakes, that you're not perfect in every which way. And so you learn to be happy with yourself, knowing that you're not the only one. Everybody around you is going through something. Sometimes we get down in the pits when we think that we're the only ones. But that helps a lot when you realize you're not the only one going through what you're going through, your struggles. Many people are going through the same thing you're going through. It's just that we're all going through it together. And so that you can take comfort in knowing that you're not the only one. And that you can't come up. You look at your past and say, hey, I got through that, I got through this, I can get through this too. I've done it before and I can do it again. It's just, that's how you become happy with yourself. And you just love on your, if you can love other people, you can definitely love on yourself.
That
Yes,
should be a
great.
little
Right.
more.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Dr. Garbage.
No, I think it's right. I think what I hear, I'm going through this process and it's incredible how your life improves, especially once you start loving yourself and being genuinely yourself. I think finding the genuinely and stop being perfect, just being you are and being present. It's the steps to make you happy with yourself, taking care of yourself, doing the stuff that you think is valuable for you, right? If you think it's easy to go to the gym and look good or Botox or buy this shirt or
Your audio is going a little in and out.
I don't hear you anymore.
can you hear me now?
Positive.
But anyway, I hope you guys. So basically, I was talking about being genuine and not perfect.
Yeah.
I'd even
Nice.
add being present in our lives, being
Mhm.
because sometimes saying just happy almost ignores all the other emotions that we're able to experience, and it's such an honor for us to be able to feel sadness, to feel anger, to feel
Yes.
jealousy. Like all those emotions are telling us something about ourselves. So it's being present in our lives is the thing to really be there.
I think that's true too. Is as I started to do. I don't know if you guys ever heard of an old book that came out, Guy Mela, back in the late 2000s or early 2000s. The Power of Now.
Oh yeah, I heard something about it.
Yeah, there's a guy that made it. It just talked about being in the now, being present. And he just realized by doing, he teaches techniques, and by doing this in the long run, he just started to realize that he was so much more happier. So instead of staying out of your mind, and that goes to it. But at the same time too, there's still got to be a little bit of a challenge. You know, sometimes people get too into doing this stuff and they just think that I'm just not gonna care anymore. I'm just not gonna like
Mm,
think, like do anything, and like that could be an
mhm,
issue because that's what's going on with my same friend that was a comedian. It was going on for a little while. But his caring, his not caring, came more out of him feeling that he's just not good enough. So like if that becomes the point where I'm just like I'm not good enough, I give up on everything. Like obviously there's gonna be some, like that's not gonna lead to any type of happiness.
Right.
So there's got to be some type of challenge or whatever, something that you want in life, and then a for you, like go at least some type of goal or something for you to like get it, and it could be something small at first, but after moving forward and like gaining this certain things that lead to this goal, and ultimately get into it, like you get happy within those times, and showing gratitude, that's a other thing that a lot of people forget to do. Like when you complete some of this stuff,
mm.
once you show gratitude to it and be happy that you actually did these steps, that is how you love yourself.
Yeah,
I
gratitude.
what I was saying, if I may, Aziz.
Go
I
ahead, go
think
ahead.
much of what we're saying has to go with a topic that we had previously, sort of like the spiritual awakening. And I think one thing that is sort of important to remember is that it is a unique experience. We all do have our own unique experience, but we all are also a part of the same sort of collective. Though we all are in avatars right now, I would assume that you guys are a human in a headset. And when we are talking about being happy, or we are talking about achieving our goals or being ourselves or the ways that multiple people have sort of described it, I think across the globe, and perhaps we're sort of privileged to be able to experience this in droves every single day, but there are different perspectives of the way that one can live their life and what happiness actually is.
Mm,
And I think that is one of the reasons why presence and being grateful and having your own feelings with experiences is super important, because there are many different teachings and cultures and way that we live life that sort of tells you this is how you need to do it and this is how it is. And you can sort of get into literature and the way that things have sort of been, especially when it comes into this sort of genre of things, whether it's philosophy or psychology or social economics or anything of that nature. I think it really does come down to your own personal experience and how you choose to perceive things, whether you perceive not achieving your goals as not achieving them or as a failure, or you see failure as a good thing, as just a part of your experience and a part of your learning, and how you, as a spirit, if
mm.
you will allow me to
I'm
speak,
loving this
as a
conversation.
spirit in a human body that's experiencing yourself in the world at this time. I think we all are sort of having privileges at this time as opposed to centuries ago. I think there are different ways of being happy and seeing the world and what you'd like to do that perhaps, if you want to take it with a spiritual perspective, are helping sort of the collective consciousness. I know that's not the topic right now, but I think it's all part of the same thing. We're all doing the same thing here, just different perspectives. That
Mm,
that can be what is asked for, or what is being called from you at that time. And if you're sort of on a spiritual journey, you'll sort of enter that with the perspective of having respect for yourself while having respect for others. And that sort of amalgamation is something that can allow for some healthy growth. And that is my perspective of being healthy. But some other people don't see it healthy. You can sort of, at certain points in your journey, sort of see that as others sort of imprinting on yourself, sort of one thing, and like you're trying to be like them and you're trying to be right. Whereas that could be, at this day and age, in the community that you're in, a safe thing to do, whether you're talking about survival, with finances, or whether you're just talking about survival in your culture. We were just talking earlier about, you were talking about the Black Sea and the war that happened there, and your perspective on what you wanted to do, not necessarily something that you want to be doing at that moment or at that place. And that could be a part of your journey of you being in the world right now, and whether you choose to express it and can change others' minds. But if you haven't expressed that within yourself and gone through that inner journey, externally, it's sort of, I think, is just shown. It's not necessarily wrong. I think just other people can see it and they can have their perspective. But it's super important to understand, to have your own perspective on it, so that your spiritual expression can be more one of love and be one that is more integrative in your experience, body, mind, and soul, whether that's, your biological body whether that's your student body, if you're a student, whether that's your cultural body, whether it's the mindset of the culture, whether it's the mindset of your family, and whether it's sort of happy progression, or whether someone says, no, you're drawing on the wall and I don't like that. Don't be happy about that. Or no, you want to be funny. I don't think you're funny. Stop doing that. Your personal experience, I think, is important. And if you keep doing that and it doesn't make you happy, you tried everything, that's when these questions of, self-exploration, do I want to do this? Is this something I want to do? And integrating what you've attracted around you, whether that's in the form of a person or the form of a lesson or the form of a conversation. I think that's sort of what you're allowing into your experience and what you're sort of blocking from your experience. And I think that's just part of our human experience.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, I'm glad that you finally decided to speak out.
It's a little early. I needed to warm up.
Yeah, you got
No,
it.
I'm loving this conversation. I appreciate everybody sharing their insights. To be honest, this has been great.
Yeah, it's been here.
It's
It's
this journey together, huh?
Yeah, I love it. It's been for 2 years we've been hosting these events, and like every single time we enjoy it so much because it's an open floor and people can just express themselves. And this is precious when we find commonalities, and it's even more precious, I believe, but just in a longer term when we find differences and we allow these differences to exist, right? And to allow other people to believe different things, so that way later we can after many like exposure points to that idea, you might think that it's something that you want to adopt as well, right? So like it's good to have a choice than not to have it, right? So but I think the main idea
I
of
think
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say, I think I already mentioned it, but that's why I'm grateful. I'm thankful that you allow for this space to be open and for this to actually occur. I think we are a little privileged in Altspace because they do sort of have the same philosophy sort of integrated in their DNA. However, if you allow yourself to see yourself this way, being a leader and allowing for this space to occur and understanding that you can have that be a safe space and people can feel free to express, I think is super important, because we already touched on this, but we don't necessarily have that in society.
Exactly.
And I think
Right.
once it gets to, expressing yourself, being happy, technology changing things, people changing things, people not wanting things
Politics.
to change, that's something we haven't touched on.
Yeah,
And the economy not changing, or legal certain things changing. And again, you mentioned war, and there are different perspectives happening across the globe. And I'm glad I got to this. We have the globe in front of us, and another sort of privilege that Allspace allows us is we can see how I'm in the West Coast. I don't usually share where I am because I'm in multiple places. But we do sort of see that there are people from across the globe that is confirmed, and that can sort of help with our own sort of exception of, or inception or acceptance of what they're saying, and that's how a mindset could sort of be cultivated across the globe, and that's how they do it there, not necessarily how we do it where I am, but that's okay. However, we have a space to see that, and for that to just be and not be contested in a way where we're going to be hurt aside from the hurt that we sort of allow from ourselves. I mean, we are sort of digital representations of ourselves. We're not physically near each other, and so that sort of takes away some of the barriers of wanting to express that, being in a physical location does sort of force you to take into account, and we don't really allow for that. That's not something that's sort of okay. We sort of want
I
the
don't think
same
so.
thing to go
What
on.
do you
Yeah.
what do you do when okay, here's an aspect. You love yourself, okay? Sometimes the things around us help us to love ourselves. What happens when those things are taken away, moved out of place, not around us anymore? Those things, because prior to that, we thought all this love coming from self. But when certain things begin to be moved out of our lives, like say a broken marriage or a love relationship, your children don't want to speak to you, or you lost your finances, all these things which were the foundation, almost like the foundation of you loving yourself. You could be happy with yourself because you had certain things in your life. But what do you do when these things are moved out of the way? Do you still love yourself? Can you love yourself? How can you feel whole without these other things in your, or not, I would say things or people or these other things in, yes, things in your life. If you don't have your, like, what do you do? For me, okay, I can speak for myself because that has happened to me. I was happy with myself. I loved myself, you know. I had the things that I wanted. Sometimes I didn't always. Sometimes when I was sad, you know, when I was little, your mother kiss your boo-boo. You know. But I found in life, because there was in time of my life, everything got moved out of the way. I looked to the left, I looked to the right. I said, oh my God, I'm going down. I'm going down. There was nothing to hold me up. It's like like gravity had disappeared. There was nothing to sustain me, nothing to sustain me at all. And so for me, as a Christian, this is when I found God in my life. I only found him when everything else, prior to that, I didn't need him. There was no need for him. You know, I had my father, my mother, sisters, friends, blah, blah, blah. When all that disappeared, I realized I needed someone, and I wasn't enough for me. I wasn't enough for me. And so now I'm glad, in fact, just to share this perspective, that I found someone that even when I'm feeling at my worst, even when I'm down in the pit, and I know that there's this love that is still there, and that which enables me to continue to love me, and not only just myself, but to love others as well. You know, it causes me to, even those who despise me or try to hurt me, I can still love them from a distance. But I can still love the world around me because it's a love, there is a love that even when you don't feel love, or even when you even put out love itself. This is why so many people commit suicide, because when which made them happy, whatever, you know, they feel like there's nothing. There is still something, and that's the key. There's, no matter what we go through in this life, there's still something in this life that can still connect us. We don't have to lose it all. We don't have to
And
lose
that's
it
where
all.
I was going with. Oh, sorry, I wasn't sure if you're finished, but that's where I was going with sort of the spiritual
Sure, I'm
awakening
finished.
in sort of those communities. That's where that love is sort of being integrated, but not necessarily using that vocabulary, right? Because there are certain people that don't necessarily want to take to God, and they're not necessarily religious.
Yeah.
And that atheist community, I've sort of noticed, have some of them have sort of migrated into sort of the spiritual community, and some of the vocabulary there is, you know, awakening to your own awareness, and when things do go bad and when they are sort of wrong and you're looking left and right and you're not sort of seeing those same attachments that you've had throughout your life. That's where people are saying like the dark night of the soul, and they're not really sure, you know, how their soul can express anymore because they don't have those things. And a part of the journey is learning you didn't need those things to begin with. You have yourself, and you're always going to have yourself throughout this life, whether you go home or whether you go home. Those are sort of the two examples of the same sort of energy of always having oneself and having your own awareness and perspective. And
I
I'm
didn't
not
want to
sure if
go home
someone
because
wanted to
home meant I
express.
had to die. I
If
didn't want
that's
to
your
die. I didn't want to
perspective,
die.
that's your
No,
perspective. I'm
well,
sort of
sometimes
saying
we
in
get
a
so down
general sort of thing.
die.
Because
I
home
wanted
could
to
be
die
yourself, right? You
because
could
life
see that
didn't
as
have
your
nothing.
perspective. You did have yourself. You had your own
I said
perspective. Go on.
Yeah.
it wasn't enough.
Hold on. Megaphone.
True.
If you can't love yourself first, then you can't love nobody else. You can't give
True.
somebody what you don't have.
True.
What I'm saying.
When you're
Mhm.
hurting, I'm talking about when you're hurting.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
feel
Right.
Understand.
depleted. I don't know if you've ever
Feel
been there. Has
completed,
anyone
but
ever been there?
but
No, I mean you feel
when
like you
you
want to die. Have you
I
ever felt like you
understand,
want to die?
but sometimes that's when you find things. Is when you lose
Right.
things, then you find
Mhm.
things.
That's when I
You find out
found.
what
Yes.
which is important. You start when things. So for instance, say like if you have a job, you lost your job, right? And some things you can't do without, but you get down to the bare necessity. You need a place to stay. You might lose your car, but you got a place to stay. In other words, that's what's more important than anything else. that your well-being is more important than anything else. It's not
Mhm.
about what you have materialistically, or not even people. Because if someone abandons you in your moment of need, then their love is not true for you. So you got to realize that's a blessing that you find that people are not there for you when you need them. That's a blessing. I mean that what was false will get burned away, and what's true was gonna stand. And what you had was yourself, and then you found God. That was it. I mean, that's all what you needed. That was the truth. So you understand what I'm saying? So in other words, you got to go
Mhm.
backwards sometimes to go forward. Like driving a
Amen.
car, you got
Mhm.
to go backwards sometimes to go forward. So, I mean, don't look at it as, well, I'm losing something now. I'm losing this. I'm losing this. You're losing that. You're being stripped down to your bare in order for you to find out who you are and what's real. See, all the illusion fades away. So everything that's,
Mhm.
dirt came out the wash like that is what I'm saying. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's exactly.
sometimes when you go through something, when you're downtrodden and everything like that, you feel, well, this is the worst thing. No, it's the best thing that ever happened to you is for
Mm.
you to be
Woo.
Ooh.
downtrodden like that. Was the best thing because you enlightened. You're a better person you are today than you were then. You have to go through that. You see what I'm
Okay.
And
saying?
Bernie,
So,
to answer your
Sure.
question, that is something that I have been going through. There's been a lot of dark
right,
things that have been happening in my life that I'll allow to express. I've been expressing this in alt space, and that's what I mean by the dark night of the soul. There's nothing around you. No one agrees with you. People may not even like you. They don't want you to get up. They don't want you to get better. And who did I have?
mhm,
I had myself, and because I chose to, and there are other ways to see this. I'm not trying to impose this on anyone because this is a religious
Mhm.
perspective, but you
right,
do have God, or you can find God. And something that I've always
right.
had
Mhm.
since I was younger is that God is love. That's something
It
that I
is.
Mhm.
choose to hold as a belief. I understand, especially in my experience, there are many people, and this is my personal experience of being in the tech industry, as well as being in my physical location and different communities that I've been within. They don't necessarily adhere to religion. And talking about
Right,
God is not something that you should do. And you should focus more on the house and not yourself. But you're always going to
Mhm.
take yourself wherever you go, whatever house you're
right,
in, whatever
right.
location
Mhm.
you're in, you're
Mhm.
always going to have
Mhm.
yourself. And I
Mhm.
do express that I do sort of adhere to religion and I do follow God and I do see God as love. Some
With,
people
with,
just see the love, and
with,
you've espoused that clearly, but you've also said that you're religious. And I think the love is enough,
mhm.
that underlying energy that connects us all. One is all, and the all is one. And we're having our own perspectives within this, this universal perspective within the metaverse, but it's really like the
Mhm.
multiverse, right? And that
Right.
is sort
Mhm.
of where our human experiences are sort of, weaving in within one another, and we get to choose how we get to express that being happy within that. And some people don't want you to be happy. They don't have that sort of communication and allow for that. And it is a blessing to have the space to express yourself to do that. There are spaces that don't allow you to do that, but it is changing.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Just
Mhm.
wanted to say too. Another thing too is don't be bitter by anything. Like a lot of people go through that downtrodden and that dealing with people. Like I at my job and everything. I deal with difficult people. But you know what? I'm not gonna let them change me. I'm not gonna be bitter. The best thing to do
Mhm.
is if you can't get along with somebody, just give them silence. You know what I'm saying? I mean, don't be hateful and
Exactly.
everything. Don't be bitter.
Respect.
Just give them silence and
Mhm.
just be who you are. And just knowing within yourself. Sometimes when you're around a lot of people, they tell you how messed up you are, and it's really them. Because the Bible
Mhm.
says we fight against not flesh and blood, but we fight against spirit, principalities and wicked spirits and stuff like that. So I mean, so you don't let them overtake you. Don't let them don't become bitter. You gotta be strong within yourself. Never be bitter. You know,
Mhm.
just get
Well,
better.
Mhm.
that,
How that saying
well,
go? Don't
that,
get bitter,
that's
get
fair.
better.
Get better.
Mhm.
Right.
Nice, nice, great, great
Well,
quote.
that is, well, you gotta take it too. Like I've been doing this for years, like what you just said. So that is great. I fully understand what you're saying. But I feel like sometimes it comes down to too, like how we look at the situation. Sometimes you're saying that when you're downtrodden, sometimes when you're downtrodden, like sometimes it's you might not even be downtrodden. It may just be your perception that you're
Right.
downtrodden. But a lot of times, maybe there's quite a few people that's even worse than you, question, what I feel more is that when you're not going when things aren't going so well in life, that's when you have to like start to develop in on um creating like a silent mind, creating like more silence within. So therefore you can become more present. And then because when you start going through those things, then that's when you start getting be told or starting noticing your awareness becomes higher. And then that's when you're able to realize that there's maybe even like a greater path for you. And you start to realize that these people don't really mean anything. Is I've worked from jobs which were horrible, and I remember going through that like same thing. And I remember there was one time in my life where it was one of the worst times in my life where I became atheist. And I remember working the worst job ever, and the people around me were so bad, so they're just evil. I don't even want to go into what they do. And I remember I got to the point where I ended up like looking back at some old YouTube videos of a guy that I got into at one point. His name was Muji, and he's like a spiritual teacher. And I started to look at his stuff, and I started to feel happy again. And then I applied it to my job. And what would happen is that I would do my work, and these people would be like, saying like being evil, doing certain things. I didn't care. I built a happiness within myself, which came out of silence. And I just kept getting better. And then I got to the point where they started to say, "Man, this guy's a good worker." And then next thing you know, some of them changed because they had nothing to do but respect me because I was such a good worker. And then the other people that didn't respect me, they just got jealous, but they got worse because that jealousy made them not focus on their job. So a lot of times that's how it goes. Like you just basically try to create that inner silence and like also bring up your awareness, become aware of what you do and everything. And then next thing you know, that's when the greatness comes out and gets to a point where people cannot deny you anymore. So I became great and everything at that job, and when I got to the point where they wanted to like give, like they wanted to like promote me and like to other things, that's when I left and got another job just to like put it in their face. So, like, sometimes that's what you do, and then like then I'm leaving, and like I know a guy that worked there. I haven't talked to him in a long time now, but he ended up telling me that after I left, they changed up everything. They got rid of most of those people that were evil, that were like negative and everything. And he said it's a totally different job now. So in a way, you end up becoming like part of that change, even though you were not there. Became part of that change, and you became part of that change because you put your
you didn't return evil
higher,
for evil.
on higher things. I did not become them, and you put it on higher things, becoming yourself, creating that inner, becoming aware and creating more inner silence within yourself.
Let me ask you this,
have
though.
that,
How do you
wow.
put yourself in that state of happiness where you change your outlook? Because think about it. The same situation, you just changed the way you thought about it. So that changed everything. Huh?
Yeah. So what I did was like from the Muji training, he does this thing, he calls it the space-like awareness. And it's similar to what we call mindfulness. And what I did is that what I did worked. I put myself in that state where I would just listen to my breathing, and I would just it's almost like you forget about yourself, forget about you being who you perceive you are, and you just focus and be present on what you're doing. You just keep doing that, and you get to this point where it's almost like feel like something taking over you. You become almost like an instrument to the divine, and you just start doing, and you keep doing these things. And at first, you're just learning how to flow with this, and then once you keep doing it, after a while, you get faster. You just keep going and going. And then that's how come when people started to see me do this, my work and my stuff, they just got to the point where they're like, "Man, this guy's like a machine, man." And I just kept going and doing that. I wouldn't pay attention to them. And again, they couldn't. They would try. Some of them would try to maybe say negative things to try to get me to stop, but just didn't pay attention. I just kept going and going, and got to the point where I became such a good worker. They couldn't say anything. Mhm.
But is it possible after all that reserving yourself, putting saying is tuning out? Is it possible that if you had stayed for a month later, you would have gone off on someone?
Yes. Oh,
Because sometimes things build
if I
up, you
didn't
know.
change, I would have killed someone. Like, I'm serious. That's how bad the place was. I probably would have. And it
You
was
sound mad right now. Thanks. I'm use that. I would
Yeah.
definitely use that. But let me ask you, so that's
So-
when you started believing God again? Is when you started doing this? You said you were an
What-
atheist,
that-
right?
I became atheist. That's how come I'm a little more into the mystic
Mhm.
religions or whatever. 'Cause it's all about experience, about experiencing this higher self or whatever. So when I'm able to put myself and experience that self, like that what we may call God, universe, whatever you perceive it as. I mean, even
Right.
like the key thing is that you're supposed to put it into like your daily work. You're supposed to put it into daily, like what you do daily. And a lot of
Right.
people, that's the problem. They just try to do this stuff maybe at the church or whatever, then they go in there and live the day. But no, you're actually supposed to put this into like
And-
your
and-
regular work.
But you know what? The Bible says something about Bernie could tell you this too. It says
Mhm.
that for you to acknowledge him in all your ways. You know what I'm saying? So basically you were doing that without realizing you was acknowledging, you said, the universe, inner
Yep.
power as you call it and everything. I mean, you can name it, whatever, it's God, and it sort of, you kind of was in his presence in a way that you forgot about things. Your mind was focusing on what you were doing, worried about your
Exactly.
problems and what you was doing anyway. So it's like you stepped outside yourself
Yep, that's exactly
in a way.
it. Like it takes
Right.
over. That's exactly what happens when you
Right.
put this into your life and everything. It takes
Right.
over, and then you just move forward, and then you do so much
Right.
great things. Like when doing that, it's like getting in a zone. Like even like if you see like people that play sports, they could tell you about like the same feature where they get into a zone, and then all of a sudden their mind is just quiet, and it's almost like
We
they
call it
just
flow.
feel
Some people call it
like
flow.
yeah. Because
Yeah.
if you look at someone like Michael Jordan, if you look at him a lot, if you look at some interviews, they ask him, they're like, man, how do you do half of that stuff? He'll just sit there and say, I don't know. And the reason is because when you're in a zone or whatever, it's almost like something else is just directing you and doing that. And you just do, like, all you do is you train yourself in different ways, so you have your skills. So therefore you know different ways to, like get the job done or whatever it is. But then once you get into that zone, it's like the universe takes over and those skills just come out.
Right. Like I'm into Stoicism too, and
Okay.
that goes along with it too, with your
What is that? What is
personality.
Stoicism?
Stoicism, it has something to do with you controlling your emotions. You have an inner peace. They got what they call it. They call something inwardly call it tranquility. That they
From a
believe in
Greek
being a state of
philosopher.
tranquility. Huh?
Who-
Sorry.
It's from a Greek
Who's
philosopher,
they?
Stoicism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's
Yeah,
they?
I read
Said
that
they.
book. That helped me
They,
tremendously around my journey.
Plato,
Stoicism.
Socrates, and all of them.
who's-
That's what Stoicism.
Oh.
In a way,
Um,
it's an offshoot of Christianity.
Real
Oh,
quick,
okay.
it is after
I don't know
our
if I did that
official
part.
ending time, guys. We just
Sorry.
want to give an opportunity for people to leave and to tell you guys thanks for coming. Thanks for participating.
Hey, Omi, when I have a chat.
Be here until All Space closes every
Sure.
Saturday at the same time.
Maybe even
Uh,
Fridays
Anything
when
else you want to add?
when we have time in our
Friday.
I wanted to add really quickly,
Yeah.
there's a book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. That's the philosopher who,
Beautiful.
yeah,
Beautiful.
that book and just the concept of meditation has been sort of a underlying common denominator with multiple spiritual practices that I've gone through throughout my life, from religion to atheism to everything
True.
else. So
Yeah, that's
Marcus
what-
Aurelius meditations and meditating every single day has been masterful, and everything that Omni was talking about I experienced through mindfulness and meditation, and then being aligned with your emotions, and in a sense being emotionless is sort of one of the crux of stoicism. I do think having some of your emotions is necessary so that you can guide yourself through your life, so you know what makes you happy as opposed to what makes someone else happy. But Meditations by Marcus Aurelius is a good intro
Right.
to stoicism.
It's about examining your life. They say a life unexamined is a life not worth living.
Yeah, guys, you can actually stay and hang around more. You can stay in this space. It's gonna be on for more. I have a couple of requests though. We are planning to move to some other platform and take to the next stage of its development. So we would love to get your contacts or like how we find you after Altspace is gone. That's my main concern.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want to continue this in other platforms.
Yeah, that would be great.
I like
Just send me your emails. So far, I'm collecting emails, so that way it's the easiest way to connect with people and further give them surveys or forms. I have a little survey about Altspace with a couple of questions where people would like to move and stuff like that. So you could use the form as well. Mendes, do you still have that link to hit? Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you guys have a Discord?
message to everybody.
We do,
yeah,
but it's
it's
almost
well
dead, so we have to go back to it and revive it. Oh, okay, nice. Nice. I have your EDU. So you're an educational worker. That would be great. Okay, so couldn't you do the link because this is a Google Docs file? Can
Yeah.
you open it?
What's that?
Okay.
Wow, you can open it. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah.
It's not scrolling.
It's interview. It's something different. Oh, did you participate in the Altspace users too? Like the Turkish, the Galatasaray University? I see the link that is there. Anyway, so yeah, we have a very short form where you can leave your email and like answer a couple of questions on which platforms you would like to prefer, because we are trying to ask our community members to find the solution. But I like Spatial for it's like it's easy to get there, but I heard that you have to have subscription or something to gather more than 4 people. So VR Chat is like a rather popular platform where some of the projects are moving on, like the Evolver. They're going to be there, and some other projects as well.
Hey, children.
Yeah, but we will find the
There's a lot
way.
of kids over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of kids in there.
Yeah. In general,
Vulgar
yes.
kids.
So yeah, Spatial is a little bit more serious. Some people say Engage. Some people say Horizons.
Yeah, Engage is pretty serious.
Engage. I heard Engage.
I think Spatial is pretty
Spatial,
good,
never
and I
heard of
think
Spatial.
Yes,
that
Spatial.
Dancer is one that's going to be pretty promising. It's sort of coming from an older branch of Altspace.
Nice.
They are still in development, and they're having a meetup today, actually.
Oh,
but they
where?
are still quite young. But it's very accessible to WebXR and being able to get on the phone.
What's
it's
the
called
what's the
Banter.
name?
Banter, BAN.
Oh yeah, somebody.
And they're having a meetup today at 1 p.m. PST.
What
They
about
are quite
Horizon
young, but
Worlds?
they're started by
Oh.
someone from Altspace. And then, of course, I was going to say there's Facebook Horizons, but you need an invite to get there.
What about big screens?
Oh, big screen is lovely. You're right, Barbara.
Screens.
That's a
I
good
like
idea.
big screens.
Yeah, that's big
I
screen.
like it at night where all the kids are in bed.
Yeah,
I think you're going to do something in there, right? What's the limit? Do they have a limit as far as the meetings in there?
Oh, it's 15, but that's all you need.
15.
15.
Right.
Well, we
Okay, that's
actually
good,
had
yeah.
some events where up to 34 people simultaneously in the room. 15 is at least what
Right.
we've got. So I think that I would love to expand more, because this is like a very comfortable size for me. So if there's like 20 or 30 people, I think we could easily manage that if we have the selection of people similar to Altspace. So I still want to allow people to join if they just like casually, dropping by, because we had that flux a lot during the 2 years. Some people come and go, and like there are new people who join, so that kind of keeps the project alive, because there are different opinions, different periods of time when people join. So yeah, we're still looking for solutions, but I think email is the best way to keep in touch. Even after years, you could like reach me out using pretty much the same email. So I think this is the closest you can get to a person. The closer than that, only like messengers like WhatsApp or Telegram or something like that. So let's start with emails, because it's most formal, safe, and at the same time we could contact you and reach you like sooner or later and get your opinion and see how it goes. Even in March, April, we could find out what's going on and find each other somewhere. Yeah, and yeah,
I went over
that's it.
to
Mhm.
I went over to VR chat, and it was like the Twilight Zone for. I'm like,
I know.
I didn't know what I was. I didn't know what I was
Yeah,
doing.
the
Yeah, you do
avatar
need
was
to be
kind
a
of
part of the
weird.
group to
It's
be in
strange.
VR chat.
You could be anything weird in there. It's weird.
Exactly. Exactly. Kermit
We are chat
stripper.
not the-
Banana, anything
Yeah.
is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's why they love
The
it.
problem with
Religious
it?
and
Create
religious
private
discussions
spaces.
are not
Uh,
allowed in VR chat in public rooms, so you have to be. It needs to be private. I believe
Mm-hmm.
we definitely need
Then-
to take a look to the guidelines of any apps or platforms that
Oh.
allows us to freely speak in this field.
Is
Yeah,
Rec
Miss
Room? You
Newman.
think Rec Room is acceptable? What you think?
Oh, Rec Room is
Rec
the
Room.
worst, man. Oh my
It's the worst?
God. You want
What's the
to
word?
see some-
What is that?
Kids mostly.
Underground
What is that?
kid.
It's
Rec
an
Room.
app.
Oh.
It's a social
I
app.
need my
Oh,
phone.
Rec Room. That's for kids. That's
Well,
for kids.
Ozzy, it's
Well, I
thank you
know,
for
but
having this
still, they
space.
got
do need to-
adults in there.
Yeah,
too.
thanks for coming. I really have to run too. My dog is still
We
waiting for
shouldn't
me.
even- we
Yeah, I
shouldn't-
was
we
just
shouldn't be
curious
over there
conversation.
Look
anyway.
for the next one.
Yeah, yeah. I'll
Right, you're right.
yes.
You're right.
There's a recording. I'm gonna upload it to YouTube. So if you
Be
wanna watch
someplace
the
serious.
first part
You're
or
right,
anything,
Vern.
it's there. See you later, everybody.
I still
Ciao.
like big screen. Big screen at
Yeah,
night.
big
you know?
screen is better. 'cause
Yeah, let
Yeah,
me
I
know
like
what
those
you
ones.
decide. What's your
Yeah.
most average answer? Like
Well,
so.
big
yeah,
screen, you
emails.
have to download it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have it on my download, but